Here's a interesting statistic, and I know we've mentioned this a few times in the past. It looks like Google's the only brand that's growing. This is pretty amazing. Now, I saw this come out this morning and I was like, whoa, that's incredible, especially with where the industry is going in our next story. Kind of doom and gloom, so don't miss that. We're going to get to it in just a second, but well, we'll see. But Pixel is growing, and again, they take a lot of crap for, well, especially this 10A, right? It's a refresh, but Apple's been refreshing devices for the last 7 years, so I don't really think the criticism is warranted. Of course, I may make a joke or two every now and then, but it's common. It's common practice, and let's face it, it's a good, dependable mid-range phone. I was gonna say cheaper phone, but it is, right? The 10A is for your parents, your grandparents, your aunt and uncle, or sister or brother that's just, tech isn't their thing and they just want a working phone. Get them a Pixel. I promise you. They rarely have any problems. I know we just discussed Pixel issues, but that's very, very rare. They're very dependable. They just work. They take fantastic photos. It's simple to use. Like, it's just a good phone. Now, of course, we're not going to compare it to the flagships like our Ferraris and the OnePlus 15s, or the Suburban, the do-it-all Suburban, or pickup truck like our S26 Ultra, we're not going to necessarily. They don't fit in with that style, with that brand, with that functionality, and that's okay. Pixel has its own little niche, and I think they know this. They know their consumer, and they continue to grow. So this is very good news for Pixel, for Google. They know their niche and they're growing. They're sticking to their niche. So it continues to be a bright spot. So this new report reveals that Pixel is seeing growth already this year as everybody else struggles. Now, Samsung would say different, but remember, Samsung just hit record record revenues for the first quarter of this year, largely due to memory costs, the cost in rising memory, which we're going to get to shortly. But their sales, Samsung broke sales for the S26 Ultra, but that's not the only product they sell. Samsung is an enormous company that has tons of, sell all sorts, and they not just all sorts of products, they have tons of phones too. Now, we'll have to see when a report comes out on Samsung mobile division, but this new report by Counterpoint Research indicates that the entire global smartphone market in quarter 1 2026 dropped by 6% year over year. That's a huge number. 6%, you'd be like, that's not that much. That's huge. That 6% equates to hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that has dropped from this time last year. Apple's leading the market right now at 21% or 21% of share of the market. And they actually earned a 5% growth thanks to the iPhone 17 demand. They've sold an enormous amount of 17s. Now, I just think that was due to I lost my train of thought turning down my volume on my phone. I think that was due to come on. Update schedules. Like, they just fall every few years. They'll have an enormous iPhone because they have so many. Every few years, people update their phones. A lot of people don't update their phones every year like we do, or like I do, or every 6 months like I do. It's typically every few years, like the average person does, like a normal person does. And I think this year Apple just saw an update churn, an update every few years. They have enormous growth, and this year was one of them. Samsung didn't lose any market share, but they did see shipments fall 6%. Xiaomi saw a bigger drop. Yikes, 19%. Oppo, Vivo dropped by 4% and percent respectively. Now, here are the bright spots. As we mentioned, the story is about Pixel. Now, before we get to Pixel, nothing saw huge growth, 25% growth year over year in Q1 2026, which is huge. The Nothing Phone 4a Pro and Nothing Phone 4a definitely helps. Now, they just released that. So these numbers on the Q1 growth for the first few months of this year couldn't have been the 4A or 4A Pro, had to have been and this is specifically phones, so this is kind of shocking. Now, it might be due to their sales in the budget to mid-range phones. They were still selling the CMF phones that would fall under Nothing, and I think the Phone 3, but I don't think that sold well. I think this is, remember, this is around the world, so had to have been the 3A, I'm assuming. I might look into that because now they got me wondering. Anyways, we'll look into that later. Pixel, back to Pixel. Google Pixel also grew 14% year over year, Q1 2026. Very, very strong selling numbers in key markets. Just a good phone, right? Pixel 10a launched Q1, also likely to help those numbers. And you can see right here in this little chart here, Q1 on the left, 2025, Q1 on the right, 2026. So very interesting. Now, let me get into this.